And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everyone, Ryan Metzler here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a release from Tasty Minstrel Games. We're going to be taking a look at Belfort, which is a worker placement game for 2 to 5 players that will play in around an hour and a half to 2 hours. And the whole concept of this game is that you are a group of elves and dwarves trying to build into a city in order to gain influence over different sectors and earn victory points or prestige or whatever you want to call it. So, now that I've given you that real brief overview, why don't we take a look at what comes inside the box and how the game plays, and then I'll give you my overall thoughts on it. So here you can see the main board and an action board for Belfort, and what you're looking at here is a pentagonal board which is made up of 5 different sections. They're all identical, and this is going to be an area where you're building different buildings on the board, trying to gain majority in each of these regions. So this would be one region. And there's going to be different types of buildings that you can build using cards and resources to put buildings out here to try and gain majority, which is going to be one of the ways of scoring points in the game. In order to do this, you're going to be placing workers on different actions throughout the game. And actions are going to be represented by planks, like these here. You can see there's a 1, 2, 3, 4 here, or a 2-player, 4-player, and 5-player spot there with planks on them. And you're going to place there in order to get specific actions. For example, here, you can place on this spot with either a circle or a square, which are going to represent different types of workers, either elves or dwarves, which are identical except for the fact that they can be used for some somewhat different actions later in the game, or for different types of harvesting, in order to get a new worker by paying 2 gold. With more or less players, there's going to be more or less of these spots available. So with 2 players, there's going to be 1 spot, but with 4, there's going to be 2, and 5, there's going to be 3. The next spot you can see here for actions is going to be to change turn order, and you can simply place one of your workers on here, and you would get the choice of swapping your turn order marker, which is going to be on your player board, with somebody else's, and then you'll be protected from being swapped with for the rest of the turn. In addition to the actions on this board over here, you're also going to have some actions on the main player board, and these are going to be in the form of guilds, which will be randomized for each game and placed out 1 in each of the 5 sectors on the board. Next to them, you will see planks, which allow you to take an action and will cost a gold. Once you've gotten further in the game, you can actually build these guilds as buildings, and then people will have to pay you to use them. But these guilds are often going to have different ways of interacting with the game or with other players. So for example, the Wizards Guild here allows you to build it, and before or after it's built, you can pick 2 locations of the same type and switch their ownership, which is going to be a way to kind of adjust the different types of control throughout the board. So maybe I need another piece in here and I have a piece in here that I don't need, so I can swap the 2. Or maybe I swap somebody else's piece with my piece in order to get better control. Different guilds will have different effects, which you can use throughout the game. In addition, you're going to be able to build buildings throughout the game. And buildings will look like this, although this one is not a good example for an action building, but building these buildings is going to allow you to place buildings out onto the board in order to get control. For example, if I build the keep that I just showed you by paying the resources it shows, so 3 wood, 3 stone, and 2 metal, once we get to the build phase, I would be able to put buildings out onto the board on a keep somewhere, and I would get influence in this area. Other buildings, such as the one here, will offer you potential to do different things throughout the game. So this one is not an action, but it's something that just happens when you unlock the card. For example, I can pay 2 wood and 3 stone, and later I would have to buy a gnome, which I'll go over momentarily, but I'd buy a gnome and place it on my card, and it's going to allow me to change one of my dwarven workers into a master dwarf, which is the opposite side of the same disc, which simply makes it worth 2 dwarves for a particular type of action. Even further cards are going to give you specific actions that you can take on your turn. Only you may take these actions. So for example, we have the blacksmith here. Costs a wood, 4 stone, and a metal, and on there you can see that there's a plank, which is the sign for being able to take an action. You can see you can either use a round or a square piece, which is going to let you get a medal, which is denoted underneath it, and if you unlock it, you can also, on your turn, pay 1 gold in order to get another medal. After you've done all of your placing, and you're going to do this in a round table order, so one player will place a piece, and the next player will place a piece, and so forth and so on, until players decide to start passing. And when they pass, they're going to place up here on these resource gathering spots. You can see we have wood, stone, metal, and gold. Only elves may harvest wood, so for each elf you put here, you're going to get 1 wood. Whoever places the most elves is going to get an additional wood. Dwarves may harvest stone. Again, 1 dwarf per 1 stone, but the most dwarves will get you an additional stone. Here, you need to combine both dwarves and elves in order to get 1 medal. 1 dwarf and 1 elf equals 1 medal, but whoever has the most medal earned on a turn is going to get an extra medal. And finally, either dwarves or elves can earn money, and again, whoever has the most will get a bonus. So actions will be taken from the top left to the bottom right, and then you'll go on to specific player turns. But at the end of all of the actions here, from getting wood, stone, metal, gold, buying more workers and changing turn order, after that you're going to have to collect income, which will be from buildings that you build which have income on them. They'll show a little coin in the upper left-hand corner. You'll collect income for each coin that you get, and then you'll have to pay taxes based on how many points you've scored. The more points that you've scored, the more taxes you'll have to pay. You'll note that I've rearranged the board here so that you can look at the victory point track, and as you start at 0 victory points, you will owe no taxes, but as you change to specific sides, the taxes will go up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and more as you earn more points. Each player will have their own player board, which will look exactly like this, and it will actually tell you right on it what you start the game with. So it says you start with 3 dwarves, 3 elves, 12 houses, 5 money, and 1 of each type of resource. It's also going to lay out each round's summary. The game will be played over 7 rounds, and you will first do the calendar round. You won't do this the first turn, but you're going to adjust the turn marker, and I'll show you that in a moment. 1 space. You're only going to score on specific rounds, so you may or may not score from adjusting the turn marker. But after that, you're going to go through with the placement that I talked about. You're going to put your workers out onto the board, taking different actions, or out onto your cards in order to take actions later. And then after you've done all of that, you're going to go through collection. So you're going to go to that board where I showed you all the resources, take your resources, add them to your area. Finally, you're going to go to actions, and actions are going to be on those guilds out on the board and on the cards that I just showed you. So there's the cards here, which you may be taking actions, and each player in turn order is going to take all of their actions. And you can activate your actions in any order, so maybe you need to gather some money before you go and buy a good. And at this point, you're also going to be able to do some other specific things, such as build 1 building from your hand. This doesn't require you to do an action, but you do have to pay the resources in order to build them. And you can actually build as many as you like, as long as you have the resources, putting these out in front of you, which will also get you spots out on the board for control. The final board we have here is kind of the turn marker board and an area for storing several different game pieces such as gnomes and building cards, as well as a little bit of information about trading. So here you can see the turn marker, and this is going to advance each round after you've done all of your building for each player, doing all of your actions out on the board and all of that stuff. You'll advance this at the beginning of the next round, and eventually you're going to get to these rounds with the X's, and the rounds with the X's are going to be scoring rounds. At the end of those rounds, you will score points. And you're going to score points based on the majority for each area. So you're going to look at each area, and whoever has the majority in each district is going to get 5 victory points. And they're going to score that on the thing around the board, which will increase their taxes for later. Whoever has the second most buildings in an area is going to get 3 points, and whoever has third most in a 4-player game is going to get 1 point. There are rules for ties, and I'm not going to go into those, but essentially it involves splitting points. You're also going to get majorities for having the most of each type of worker, or get points for having the most of each type of worker. You'll see you'll accumulate more elves and more dwarves throughout the game, and you will accumulate gnomes, which are on this board here. When you score for these, whoever has the majority of each type, elf, dwarf, and gnome, is going to get 3 points, and whoever has the second most is going to get 1. On this board, you'll also note that there is a pile of gnomes. On your turn, you may buy gnomes for 3 gold apiece. These are going to unlock some abilities on some of your cards. You also have the trading post, which says that you can sell a metal for a money or 2 other goods for 1 money, or that you may buy 1 good for 1 money or 1 metal for 2 money. Finally, you're going to see a deck of cards, which are the building cards, from which you can buy 1 each turn. You can either buy one of these 3 face-up ones, which will automatically get replaced, or you can buy the top card of the deck, taking a chance at getting something that you might want. You're going to go through all of these turns, and after the final scoring round, whoever has the most points will be the winner. So that's Belfort, and I have to admit, the first time I looked over this game, I read the rule book before Gen Con. I was determined that I did not need this game, that I was not interested in this game, and man was I wrong. This game is definitely a great worker placement game. It has a different feel to it. I'm not exactly sure where it comes from, but there's a lot of tension in trying to get the right resources to build your buildings and get the right buildings to give you that edge over everyone else. It's not just in having the majority in different areas, it's not just having the most of each type of worker. It's actually having enough money, being able to pay your taxes, not losing points in that manner, making sure that nobody else can steal your goods, making sure that you're at the right spot in turn order. You have to pay attention to everything in order to really do well in this game. And so the game scales well from 2 to 5. It's a fantastic game at all of those spots. And it's definitely something that I would suggest to anybody who's interested in a medium-ish weight worker placement game that has a little bit of a different feel to it and maybe isn't exactly what you're used to.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.